Hi everyone, it's Kathy for Not Too Shabby, and I am back again with a card using the Crafty Friends stamp set from Paperie Ink. I'll also be using the Bold Love die as well as the Postage Slimline die, and these products should be available over in Jamie's shop. I will certainly double check and link to them in the description box below, as well as all of the Copic colors that I used and all of the ink colors that I used when I actually do the ink blending on my background. One other thing, I don't think that I showed the 6x9 stencil, the polka dot one from Trinity, but I do end up bringing that in a little bit later. So to get started, I stamped these super cute little critters onto a piece of Cougar Super Smooth cardstock with Catherine Pooler's Midnight ink, and then I just jump right in with the Copic coloring. And I've got the coloring sped up quite a bit because I colored these guys exactly the same way as I did in my previous two videos, which if you have not seen those, I'll make sure to link to those at the end of this video. If you've not been over to Jamie's shop at nottoshabbyshop.com, I encourage you to jump on over there and check it out. She's got a great variety of stamps and dies and embellishments, and she ships really, really fast. Oh, and here's a coupon code for you. You can save 10% on your purchase by entering the code N2S10. Some exclusions do apply, and all of that information will also be down below in the description box. While I was coloring these little critters, I didn't think about what color to do the little X's and O's that they're holding, and so I had to take a break and come back to it because I really wasn't sure what color I wanted to use, and eventually it kind of turned out that it was my background that decided for me. Since the critters are all in very neutral colors, I wanted to make sure that their little cutouts of the X's and O's stood out quite a bit, so I eventually just decided on going with a nice teal color. It was brighter than the background, and I think that they ended up standing out quite nicely. Because the X's and O's are so little, I didn't really try to do shading at all, except for on the panda. I think I did come in with a darker color and a lighter color, only because he's holding a whole bunch of them in like a big mess. Like he's almost got too many in his hands to hold. So I did bring in a BG11 just so that there would be a little bit of separation between each of the little X's and O's that he is holding. So once I finished all of the coloring, I did do some fussy cutting for these little critters. A couple of tips and tricks for fussy cutting. I like to cut away a lot of the excess cardstock before I actually start doing my cleaner fussy cutting. It just makes it a little bit easier without having all the excess cardstock in your way. Another thing that I do like to do is I prefer to turn the cardstock more than my scissors, especially on rounded areas. It tends to keep you from getting those really sharp points that you sometimes can get when cutting out rounded images. And I did try to keep a little bit of a white border around these little guys. So once I was done with the fussy cutting, I set the little critters aside and started to work on my background. I started out with a piece of cardstock that measures 3.5 by 8.5 and decided to do some ink blending, and I used the more pastel colors of the Distress Oxide inks. I started out with spun sugar, and then I moved on to dried marigold. Then I brought in squeezed lemonade, and for this piece I wasn't too concerned about getting a perfect blend because I knew that I was going to be stenciling right over top of it. When I got down to the green, I had picked out Shabby Shutters, and I did not like that color at all. So then I came in with Cracked Pistachio and went right over that. I finished up with Tumbled Glass and Shaded Lilac, and I had to grab a piece of scratch paper so I didn't end up with fingerprints on my cardstock. After I was done with the first round of blending, I did come back in and darken up some of the areas, particularly the spun sugar and the dried marigold. Then I brought in my 6x9 stencil from Trinity Stamps, and this one has a bunch of tiny little polka dots on it. I just used paper tape? No, painter's tape to hold the stencil in place on my craft mat, and then I also taped it to the, I also used painter's tape to tape my cardstock to the stencil just to hold it in place. Now with this passive ink going over it, I'm going in with a much heavier hand because I do want to have those polka dots show up, but I did want them also to be more of a tone on tone. I didn't want them to stand out too much because I really kind of wanted the focus to be on my little critters. Once I was done with the stenciling, I ran that through my Gemini Junior with the Postage Slimline die from Whimsy Stamps, and I used my tape runner to adhere that to the front of my card. My card started out as 8.5 by 7 inches, and then I folded it at 3.5 on the 7-inch side, and my card base is 80-pound Neenah Classic Crest cardstock. I used my tape runner just to adhere the little postage pieces in the center. I thought about leaving them out, but I really liked the idea of having the die cut word be in white to kind of balance out the white border around the postage die cut. I did put some foam tape on the back side of those letters rather than stacking them, just because I was being a little bit lazy. And I also have foam tape on the back side of my little critters. So once I had them in place and I was happy with where they were, with one small adjustment to the E because it wasn't quite straight, I just pressed them all into place. To finish it up, I did use my Wink of Stella glitter pen to go over the die cut letters, and then I came in with my Blizzard Nouveau glitter drops and just added a few here and there. And with the white Blizzard Nouveau drops, what I really like about them is that it kind of picks up the color that's underneath them. So the drops that I did on the pink kind of took on a little bit of a pink hue, and so on and so forth with the rest of them. Anyway, that finishes up my card for today. Thank you so much for joining me. Don't forget to check out Jamie's shop over at nottoshabbyshop.com. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you've not yet subscribed, I'd love it if you would. And don't forget to ring the bell so you're notified every time a new video is posted. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.